Hey everyone, we are here. We are ready to go. Got some rain outside here in New England. I don't know where it is, how it is where you're listening. Most of you are in New England. Some are not. It's some in Florida, some in Arizona, IA, and all over the place. So we're glad that our audience is building online, locally here on the radio, 1590 WARV, Facebook at NewHopeCC.tv. and WARV.net. 3 ways you can get the program. And I hope that you're sharing this information and telling your friends and say, hey, here's a good way to spend 30 minutes of your lunchtime. Not only feeding the body, but feeding the soul. Yesterday, we talked about some principles to live by to have a good, healthy lifestyle. And we kind of zeroed in on 6 of them, if you remember. And here's what they are. And again, remember we said that which is spiritual is going to work its way out into the natural. Sadly, a lot of people spend more time working on the natural, and they neglect the spiritual. But the natural doesn't do as well as it could. But if you invest your time into your spiritual life, it will overflow into your natural life. It really would. So that's why we're here every day. So we talked yesterday about 6 principles to a healthy lifestyle. And a very quick review. Number 1, know God personally. Number 2, know God's will for your life. Number 3, seek Him. Remember that means beat a path to Him. We're talking about being consistent. Regularly, not like He's not your spare tire. He's your steering wheel. Okay? Number 4, know the calling that He has on your life. That God has given every one of His people something to do. Number 5, be brave. Be courageous. And number 6, just do it. Just go. Now don't, flub the dub. When you know what God's given you to do, go do it. And that's it. That's what you need to do. Now, yesterday I said, foolish me, there's no Nike logo on a pillow. Well, guess what? Lisa from Florida texted us on Facebook 5 different pillows with the Nike logo on it. So I'm like, okay, that's okay. See when you just say things and you don't know what you're talking about? That's what happens. And at least when it comes to this stuff, I seem to know what I'm talking about. But there's a lot of stuff I say, I don't know what I'm talking about. And that's up for you to decide. You have to decide if what I'm saying, I really know what I'm talking about, or maybe I don't. So anyway, we talked about lifestyle. What is a lifestyle? A lifestyle is a style of life, right? If I were to ask you to list on a piece of paper what characteristics your lifestyle reveals, what would you write down? How would you describe your style of life? In other words, what are the things that you do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis that define the person that you are? And then I would ask you, how many of those things have to do with others or self? Giving or getting? Serving or being served? How many of them are safe and how many of them are risky? Now let's make another list. This time, it's going to be the things done on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis, but not by any one of us, but by Jesus Himself. That's what we're going to see today. Today we're going to study the lifestyle of Jesus. What were the things that He did day to day, week to week, month to month that determined His style of life? Okay? So that's what we're going to focus on. And as we read the Gospels, there are certain lifestyle activities that appear pretty regularly. And these are the things that I want us to see because they define the lifestyle of Jesus. And they entail about 6 lifestyle activities. Okay? So if you want to know, if you don't know Jesus, this is a good day to tune in. You'll get to know who he is. If you do know him, you'll get to know him a little bit more. Okay? Lifestyle activity number 1. Sensitivity to the need of the moment. Jesus was sensitive to what was going on around him. He was. Remember his first recorded miracle? What was it? Anybody remember John chapter 2? He was at a wedding. There must have been a lot of people at the wedding. And in those days, weddings lasted for a while, a few days. And they ran out of wine. It's like, oh man, you can't have a wedding without wine, right? So somebody told Mary, his mother, and Mary told Jesus and said, son, they ran out of wine. And Jesus was sensitive to the moment. And he knew it would be an embarrassment for the host not to have wine for his guests, big noble wedding. So he turned 6 water pots of water into wine. And they had plenty of wine. Matter of fact, it was the best wine. They even said, man, when most people put out wine at a wedding, they put out the good stuff first, and then when everybody's had a few, they bring out the cheap stuff. But they said, no, Jesus. Well, they didn't know Jesus did it, but they said to the bridegroom, man, you put out the best stuff last. And the whole lesson there is that when you come to God, usually people come to God last, and he's the best. So the point is, what makes up the lifestyle of Jesus? He is sensitive to the moment. Wherever he was, whatever was going on around him, he was sensitive to that. He wasn't in la-la land. He didn't walk around with his heads in the cloud. He was sensitive. Number 2, healing people characterized his lifestyle. We've got so many instances of different types of illnesses that he healed. In Matthew 8, he healed a man that was demon-possessed. He healed a woman's daughter who was demon-possessed. There's a lot of demon possession, I guess, back in those days in that part of the world. Matthew 15, large crowds came to him, bringing with them those who were, now notice, lame, crippled, blind, mute, and many others. And they laid them down at his feet, and he healed them. Jesus was available. Here it is. Jesus was available to the afflictions of people. Now, it doesn't mean that he heals everybody, but he's very compassionate on the many. Sometimes he doesn't heal because, believe it or not, it's not the best thing. We might think, oh no, healing's always the best thing. Well, in God's perfect plan, sometimes healing is not the best thing. And healing others certainly characterizes his lifestyle, because the Bible tells us that news about him, it spread throughout all Syria. And they brought to him all who were ill. They were suffering with various diseases and pains, and demoniacs and epileptics and paralytics, and he healed them. So this is the kind of person that Jesus was. He healed people that were brought to him. So he was sensitive to the need of the moment. He was sensitive to the people that were around him. Number 3, you know what else characterized his lifestyle? Talking to his Father. He talked to his Father a lot. You know what we call that? Prayer. Yeah, we call it prayer, but it's really talking to God. And the Bible tells us that one time after he sent the crowds away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. And when it was evening, he was there alone. So sometimes people let the word prayer scare them away. Maybe the word is intimidating. Maybe it's too holy. Maybe it's like, I don't know what to say. Prayer is simply talking to God. That's all it is. Bare your soul. Tell him what's going on inside of you. Express your feelings. Make requests. Ask for wisdom. All of those things are prayer. It's not like a special recipe or a special approach. You talk to God like you would talk to your friend. Only when we talk to God, we call it prayer. The word is prosuke, face to face. That's all. We're talking to God face to face. There was a time, the Bible says, that after bidding the crowd farewell, he left for the mountain to pray. See, one thing about prayer, though, the best prayer is in a place where there's no distractions. So Jesus would get away. He would go to the mountain. He'd even get away from the disciples. He'd just get away from people, where it would be him and his Father. Luke tells us that Jesus himself would often slip away to the wilderness and pray. Go out in the woods. I don't know if they have woods like we do. The wilderness, it might be a barren area, a place where there's nothing. No buildings, no nothing. It just might be like a desert with some rocks and some scrub bushes, and that's about it. And he would commune with his Father. Another time, Luke said, it happened that while Jesus was praying in a certain place, after he finished, one of his disciples said to him, "Lord, teach us to pray." The disciples liked the way Jesus prayed. I think like it was different. It was free. They were used to hearing the Pharisees pray. I think the Pharisees had like rehearsed prayers, maybe memorized prayers. And maybe they appeared when they prayed so holy and so sanctified that the common people would be like, "Oh, I could never pray like that. I just might not pray because I'm not eloquent. I don't know how to make my voice go up and down and up and pray like them. They sound like movie stars." And then they'd hear Jesus. And then they say, "Oh, Jesus, we like the way you pray. Teach us to pray like you." And Jesus taught them what we know as the Lord's Prayer. And the Lord's Prayer isn't so much a prayer that we memorize, though it's okay to do it because it is the Word of God. It's a model for prayer. It's a template. It talks about God's kingdom and God's authority. It talks about our daily needs. It talks about the coming of the kingdom. It talks about things to pray for. Each one of those lines is something to pray for. It's not necessarily just a rote prayer that you recite and you don't know what it means, because remember, prayer is talking to God. So the principle is what we do in public has an effect on what others see in us. When Jesus prayed, it affected other people when they saw him pray, and they wanted to learn to pray like him. And people will watch us. And are you the kind of person that when you go into a restaurant, are you afraid or ashamed to bow your head and thank God for your meal? That's something that's very helpful. If you struggle with that, if you can get over that hump, that's going to help you to grow. It could be embarrassing for many people. The people are looking, and it's like, oh, if you bow your head and pray, they're going to know what you're doing. What if the waitress comes over? But I'll tell you what, when I see people in restaurants pray, that encourages my faith. And sometimes, if the moment's right and they're right next to me, I might say, thank you for that, and commend them for doing that. And, it's not like you make a spectacle. If you're going to pray for your food, it's not like, okay, everybody, stop eating. I'm about to pray for my food. I want you to watch. No, it's not like that. It's just, you do it just like it's about you and maybe who's ever at your table. Sometimes I'm at a table with non-Christians, and I just say, do you mind if I pray and let's thank God for the food? And every time they say, oh, please do, they're happy to do it. And I just pray in 10-second prayer. Thank God for the food. And people like that. So don't be afraid to pray in public. It's really uplifting. At least I would say for most people. Some, there might be mockers, but for most people, it's very uplifting. And what people saw Jesus do, it encouraged them, and they wanted to be like him. Okay? The fourth thing that characterizes Jesus' lifestyle is that being taught by God the Father shaped who he was. Because remember, as a human being, he had to learn, just like we do. He had to learn the scriptures. Luke tells us that he grew in knowledge. He grew in favor with God and men. Jesus didn't take any shortcuts because he was God, but in his humanity, he had the same limitations that we do. Now, John said, actually, Jesus said it in the Gospel of John. He said, I can do nothing on my own initiative. He said, oh, as I hear, I judge. And my judgment is just, because I do not seek my own will, but the will of him who sent me. When he says, as I hear, I judge, what do you think he's hearing? He's hearing his Father. His Father is saying, son, I'm going to tell you what judgment to make. Jesus was always yielded to the will of his Father. Always. That's why he could say, the things I do, my Father tells me what to do. The things I say, my Father tells me what to say. He was so yielded to God. He said, I've come down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me. I can do nothing of my own, but I speak these things as the Father taught me. So we see Jesus learned from the Father. He was a learner. What characterized the lifestyle of Jesus is that he was a learner. He learned spiritual things, and his Father was his teacher. And you know, that's a good example for us. We should all be learning spiritual things. This Sunday here at New Hope, and you can come to church here or you can stream us online right here on Facebook or at newhopecc.tv on YouTube. And we're going to begin a brand new series that's entitled The Things That Challenge Your Faith. And every week we're going to look at things that really make us examine our faith. And this week we're going to talk about dungeons. How dungeons can challenge your faith. And we're going to look at Joseph. How Joseph in the dungeon had his faith challenged. And what was the outcome of that? It was a pretty good outcome. So it's going to be a good series, probably 5 or 6 Sundays. I hope you can join us because, see, this is learning, here it comes, spiritual things. This is what we do here. We learn spiritual things. Why? Because spiritually, we want to be in the best shape possible, as well as physically, we want to be in the best shape possible. It's the whole being. We want to be very balanced, very well-rounded in our person. So we try to be disciplined physically, and we try to be disciplined spiritually and learn these things. So if you're not in the area, join us on Sunday at 9 or 11 a.m. Go to newhopecc.tv. You have 2 choices. You can click Facebook Live, or you can click YouTube Live, and we'll be on both channels. Live, learning spiritual things. Okay? All right. The 5th thing that characterized Jesus' lifestyle, I like this one. It's the way he related to children. Jesus loved children. Now, you know, he was a busy guy, right? I mean, who's more busy than Jesus, right? But yet he always had time for kids. There was a time, the Bible tells us, he called a child to himself and set him before the crowd. And he said, truly I say to you, unless you're converted and you become like children. He's probably got this little child right here. See this kid? Unless you're converted and become like this child, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And what's Jesus saying? He's saying there's something about childlike wonder, childlike faith, that we can learn from children. As a matter of fact, when you're all done growing up, be like a child. That's what he's saying. Another time, you know, there was a tradition in the days of Jesus where moms and dads would bring their little children to the rabbis, and the rabbis would pray a blessing over the children. And that was a nice tradition. So they're bringing their children to Jesus. Jesus is a rabbi, he's a teacher. They're bringing the children, and the disciples are like, whoa, hey, step back, keep back, keep back. This is Jesus. He's like too busy. He's got big things to do. He doesn't have time for kids. And you know what Jesus said to his disciples? He said, leave the children alone. Don't hinder them from coming to me, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. Like, wow, what a slap in the face to the disciples. Now, the disciples meant well, but sometimes, like me, they said dumb things. Like when I said there's no Nike logo on pillows. Well, guess what? There is. And they said dumb things. Don't bring the children to Jesus. He's like, no, you bring the children. And another gospel writer has it where Jesus took them in his arms. Like, wow. How'd you like to be that little kid that Jesus took him in his arms? That kid's in heaven today. And he's probably remembering, I remember when I was a little kid and Jesus took me in his arms. Man, what a memory. That's better than an autograph by Ted Wilson, Ted Williams, Mickey Mantle, Tom Brady. You know, Jesus took me in his arms. Maybe he ran and told all his friends. Maybe he heard about Jesus being crucified. And he said, wow, Jesus, that Jesus took me in his arms. How could they do that to him? He was so kind and gentle and loving. How could they kill him like that? You wonder how that little kid was affected. And you wonder how other little children are affected when you take them in your arms. You know, it's a good practice. Always make time for kids. When you go to church on Sunday and you see teenagers walking around, take 5 seconds and go over to them and give them a hug and say, I'm glad you're here. Make them feel wanted. Make them feel valuable. You know what? Because they are. And they live in a world that makes them feel that they're not valuable. And church is the place that people go where they feel like they are valuable, and they get back everything that's been taken from them all week long. That's what a church is supposed to be. It's a place that gives to people what they lost all week. Value, love, compassion, attention. That's what they need. So we're looking at the things that made up the lifestyle of Jesus. You know, another time Jesus said, whoever receives one child like this in my name receives me. Whoa. I said, whoa, he didn't. Whoever receives me does not receive me, but him who sent me. So Jesus is saying, listen, if you receive a child, you receive me. If you receive me, you receive God the Father. Kind of working your way right up the line there. It's amazing. What he's saying is, this is how important children are. That's how important they are. Then the last thing that characterized the lifestyle of Jesus, that he was led by the Holy Spirit. Whoa, that's important. That's a big one. Matthew tells us that Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. It's like, wow, why did he take him there? It was the Spirit that led him there. See, the Spirit is the one that leads us places. That's the place where Jesus' faith was tested. The wilderness tested the faith of Jesus. This Sunday we're going to see that the dungeon tests our faith. I wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't miss this message, and I wouldn't miss this series. And if you can't catch it when it's live, it's archived on YouTube. And you can go to our YouTube channel. And I'll tell you what, stay with us in this series. It'll really be encouraging, inspiring, and full of hope. So, throughout the Gospels, I encourage you, man, read through the Gospels. Read through the life of Jesus. We have these recurrences, these activities coming up over and over and over again that characterize the lifestyle of Jesus. What was he? Sensitive to the need of the moment. He didn't walk around with his head in the clouds. He was sensitive to the need of the moment. 2, he healed people's afflictions. He met their needs. Again, he was sensitive to the people around him. Thirdly, prayer. He talked to his Father. He talked to his Father so much and in such a way that other people wanted to learn how to do what he was doing. Fourthly, he allowed the Father to teach him. He said, my Father teaches me. In my humanity, I don't know everything. So I go to my Father and he teaches me. Number 5, he related to children in a beautiful, loving way. He lifted children up. You know, Jesus did 2 things that ancient society didn't do. He lifted up children and he lifted up women. Ancient society put women and children on the back burner. They gave them no value at all. Jesus comes on the scene. He says women have value. Children have value. And then the last thing, he was led by the Holy Spirit. And that's important, to be led by the Spirit. Better than being led by you. Be led by the Spirit. Then the Bible tells us there are also many other things that Jesus did, which if they were written in detail, I suppose that even the world itself would not contain the books that would be written. So what about you? What are the activities that define your lifestyle? Are they similar to those of Jesus? They can be, because now you know what they are. That's it for today. Thanks for coming along. Don't forget to join us Sunday morning, 9 and 11, right here, Eastern Time. Go to newhopecc.tv. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week for more of New Hope Radio.